clicking on each state will give you more details about what's happening there. For example, in Florida, you'll see that the required signatures have already been collected to add the pro-abortion proposal to the ballot. But in this particular state, the measure is currently being held up by the conservative state Supreme Court. And speaking of Florida, Montse Alvarado, president and COO of EWTN News, recently sat down with Florida Governor and presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis, who has worked to advance laws protecting the unborn in his state.
The heartbeat bill that was done provides, more robust protections and will end up saving a lot of lives. How that factors in politically, I think on issues that are fundamental, why are you in office? Are you in office to put your finger in the wind and try to contort yourself into a pretzel? Or are you in office to be able to stand up for things that you believe in?
You can catch Montse's full interview with Ron DeSantis on our EWTN YouTube page. And joining us now to discuss the impact of abortion on the political realm this coming year is Mary Margaret Olahan. She is senior reporter at the Daily Signal. Mary Margaret, thanks for joining me. Let's first focus on Florida. We just highlighted that they could see abortion on their ballot this year if the state Supreme Court doesn't step in a decisive way. What are you hearing from the Sunshine State and how abortion is pertaining to the elections there?
Well, I'm hearing across the board that pro-lifers are very concerned about these ballot measures. I mean, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, this was such a gigantic win for the pro-life movement, right? But now that we are seeing these ballot measures, it's this easy way for radical leftists or far-left interest groups to insert themselves in a state and try and take over and change that state's abortion laws to basically enshrine abortion into the state constitutions. And that's unfortunately what we're seeing pro-abortion radicals trying to do in Florida, where Governor DeSantis just signed a 6-week abortion ban or protections for the unborn. And that should show us, Prudence, just how scary this is for those trying to protect the unborn, because if this could happen in Florida, it could happen in any state across the country.
Right. And we also just heard from presidential candidate Ron DeSantis. Can you speak to how these ballot proposals popping up across the country is going to continue to impact the field of presidential candidates and how they campaign on this?
Well, they're going to have to address them, and we don't hear them talking about the ballot proposals very much.
Yeah.
As you know, Prudence, this is a tricky subject for the 2024 candidates. They know, and they're being told by Republican consultants to stay away from abortion. Unfortunately, that's what Republican consultants have been saying for a long time. But if we look at the last election results and we look at who made a clear stand and explained where they stood on abortion, showed where their opponents stood on abortion, and contrasted the two positions, the Republicans who did this effectively won, like Governor DeSantis in Florida. The Republicans who were afraid to do this and they put their head in the sand, like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, they lost. And so this is something that Republicans are going to have to come to terms with. Are they willing to be confident and to say, yes, I support protections for the unborn, here's how. And by the way, my opponent won't even tell you if he would protect babies up until the moment of birth. That's a huge issue. And frankly, if you can't say that, if you can't contrast Democratic extremism to pretty reasonable, practical Republican solutions to protecting life, then maybe you shouldn't be on the presidential stage.
Right. And it's one thing to talk about how these candidates are messaging, but when it comes to the question of abortion right on the ballot, protecting life hasn't necessarily been a winning issue in terms of these ballot proposals. 7 states now, we've seen losses. Why do you think that is?
Well, partially because the people on the ground in these states, you'll see these pro-life groups that put so much time and effort into protecting or trying to fight back against these ballot measures.
Right.
But then in Ohio, for example, you had celebrities like Barack Obama and John Legend, I believe, weighing in favor of the pro-abortion ballot measures. And meanwhile, the Republicans had J.D. Vance and the governor, who is not very conservative at the end of the day, but Republicans were able to gather support from him. Those are really the only people that came out to help Ohio. And these are big deal ballot measures, and if Republicans aren't willing to pay attention to them, we're going to lose all over the country.
Yeah, it's the messengers and the money that are really key here.
Absolutely.
Mary Margaret, you travel the country reporting on stories that matter not just on the abortion front, but the fight to protect families more broadly. What else are you tracking and hearing in these first days of the new year?
Well, we're keeping an eye on different cases all across the country that involve parents not being told about their children in relation to gender ideology. All across the country, we're hearing about schools transitioning children without the parents' consent, such as socially transitioning a child and calling them different pronouns and a different name at school without telling the parents. In early December, my colleague Tim Kennedy and I traveled to Denver to interview Joe and Serena Wales, parents of a little girl, an 11-year-old, who was on an overnight school trip and was told that she had to share a bed with a boy who identifies as a girl. And she did not know that this boy was, in fact, a boy until they were in their hotel room and he told her that.
Oh my gosh.
So this is a wild story. We sat down with the Wales. You can see it at dailysignal.com. But parents they're not going to accept this lying down. They're willing to fight for their children, and we've seen that in recent years with the way that American parents are standing up and telling school districts, no, we are in charge and you do not get the final say over our children. So those are some stories that I'm very invested in right now. We'll be tracking those at Daily Signal and excited to see what we can uncover.
Great. Well, the stories that you do uncover on that issue are always so eye-opening and important. Thanks for the work that you do. Mary Margaret Olahan of the Daily Signal.
Thank you.